Hi, I'm Mrs. Sabo, and today I'm going to talk to you about the parts of the string instruments in the orchestra. I'm going to start with the violin and the viola, but the cello has very similar parts. There's just a few differences, so I'll talk about that second. The main part of a violin or viola is this part right here called the body. The wooden body part makes up the bulk of the instrument. So that's this entire wooden part right here. On the body, there's some more parts. You have the back of the instrument is made of wood and it's a hard surface. So we use an accessory called a sponge or a shoulder rest usually to put on the back to make it a little bit more comfortable when you play it. But this is the part that would rest on your shoulder. On the front of the instrument, we have this part right here called the chin rest. It's what you rest your chin on when you're playing the instrument. When you put it on your shoulder, your chin will just drop onto this part right here called the chin rest. This is called the tailpiece. In the tailpiece, there are 4 screws called fine tuners. And the fine tuners are basically little screws that tighten and loosen the strings. And the strings are these 4 spots right here. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 strings. The strings at the bottom go all the way up to this top part right here called the peg box. And it's called the peg box because there's 4 tuning pegs that rest inside of it. The tuning pegs have the strings wrapped around them to tighten and loosen the strings. So you never want to touch the tuning pegs without help of a teacher or a professional who will help you to tighten and loosen those because they're just resting there. So if you accidentally loosened one, it could unravel the entire string. And if you accidentally over tighten one, it could snap the string. So you want to be careful again to never touch the tuning pegs without help from a teacher or a professional. The 4 strings are held off of the body of the violin, viola, or cello by something called a bridge. The bridge is this wooden part right here. It's just made of wood and it's resting there by the pressure of the strings holding it onto the body. There's no glue or any adhesive used to keep the bridge on the instrument. All that's holding it on is the pressure from the strings pushing it against the instrument. The bridge, of course, then can come off. So if your strings were ever too loose or something happened and your bridge got bumped, it could fall off. If that happens, do not glue it back on or really mess with it. Get a professional to help you out with it, or me, your teacher, to help you to put it back on in the correct spot. Beneath the strings is this black part right here. The black piece is called the fingerboard, and it's called that because that's what you will put your fingers on to play and change the notes. The fingerboard is attached to this part right here. This is called the neck of the instrument, and it's usually what we hold the instrument by when we're playing. At the top of the instrument, this swirly part right here is called the scroll. The scroll is purely decorative. It doesn't really serve any function for the sound. It just decorates the top of the instrument. On the front of the instrument, you can see that there's these holes that show the inside of the instrument a little bit if you peek inside. And these holes are called the F holes. And they're called that because they're kind of shaped like a cursive letter F. And then at the very bottom of the instrument, you have this spot right here called the button. So those are some of the parts of the violin. Next, I will show you some of the differences on the cello. Here you have the cello. You can see the cello is quite a bit bigger than the violin, but for the most part, the parts are the same. You can see the bridge is right here. It's just a much larger version, so I'll hold that up so you can see it. There's the bridge. You have the tailpiece with the fine tuners in it. And again, you have 4 fine tuners. These tighten and loosen the string. So again, you don't really want to play with those without guidance from your teacher, because if you do, you'll be tightening and loosening the strings. You've got your F holes, your fingerboard, your 4 strings. This part right here on the cello and right here is called the C belt. It's kind of shaped like a letter C. So that's especially important for the cello, but they also exist on the violin and viola. Up top, you have your tuning pegs again, and your scroll, your peg box, and the fingerboard, which you put your fingers on when you play it. One of the big differences, though, for the cello is it's got an extra piece at the bottom. At the bottom of the cello, it has something called an end pin. An end pin is attached with a screw that tightens and loosens it in place. So I'm going to loosen the screw, and then you can pull out the end pin and then tighten it in place. And what this does is it extends the cello so that it's higher up off the ground, so it adjusts and meets you right where you need it to be the right height to rest in between your legs. Without the end pin, the cello can be too low to the ground or too high up. So that end pin, you want to adjust it to get it in the perfect place, and I'll talk to you more about how to find that spot for you in future videos. The end of the end pin is quite sharp though, but your instrument probably came with a little black rubber cap that is over top of this, and that's to protect the end pin to keep you from poking anything or hurting yourself when you're carrying it around. The point of the end pin is sharp because it rests on a rug or a carpet potentially, and that just helps to hold it in place by gripping the rug. However, the cap is there to protect it, so if you don't want it on a surface, like if you have hardwood floors, you would not want to scratch them using this end pin. It would just scratch them and slip. So instead, usually people leave that cap on or use something called a rock stop or a slip stop. A rock stop or a slip stop is like a little disc shape that has one side that's made of plastic that has a lip on it, and the other side is rubberized so that it grips the floor, and then you can just put the hole of that lip, you put the end pin in there, so that way it holds it in place and creates friction with the floor so that your cello doesn't slide out from under you while you're playing it. So those are some of the differences for the cello's parts. I hope you had fun learning about the different parts of the instrument. I'll see you guys next week.